Hello, welcome to the first lecture in pointer series. In this lecture, we will be discussing what is pointer and two important operators, address of operator and a dereferencing operator, and why do we need to specify the type of a pointer and a special pointer called a null pointer, and what is pointer to pointer. So let us start with what is pointer. Pointer is a special variable which stores the memory address of another variable. What is memory address? Now whenever we declare a variable like int a, some amount of memory is allocated to store the value of that variable, and the starting address of that memory allocated is called the memory. So why do we need pointers? In C, the default parameter passing mechanism is call by value. Due to that, any change in the value of a variable inside a function will not affect the variable in the calling code. But if there is such a requirement that any changes inside the function should affect the variable in the calling code, then we are going to pass the address of that variables to the functions, and that to passing an address and then indirectly modifying the values of variables by using a pointers, we call it as a call by reference. So another use case is allocating memory at runtime. That is, suppose if you have a declaration like int a of 100, it can store maximum of 100 integers. But if at the runtime, if you require more than 100 integers, then the program needs to be modified. Instead, we are going to use a concept called a dynamic memory allocation by using pointers and a special functions called calloc, alloc, malloc functions. We can allocate a memory at runtime, and for efficient implementation of the data structures, linked lists, trees, and an adjacency list representation of the graphs, we will be using pointers. So now how to declare a pointer and how to initialize a pointer. So to declare a pointer, we just need to have a data type of a pointer followed by the star or asterisk operator followed by the name of the pointer. So examples, int star ptr, which says it can store the address of integer variable. Similarly, char star ptr, float star ptr, and double star ptr. Now all these are the declarations of the pointers where they can store the memory address of another variable. Now how to initialize a pointer? To initialize a pointer, first we should know how to get the memory address of another variable. To get the memory address of another variable, we are going to use an operator called address of operator. So address of some variable gives you the starting address of the memory that is allocated for that variable. So a pointer equal to address of that variable gives you the starting address of that variable, and that is stored into the pointer. Okay, so now let us consider an example program. Consider an example program where you have a declaration int star p, a pointer declaration, and it's a normal integer variable int a equal to 20. Now p is equal to address of a. This is how we initialize a pointer. When we write address of a, the starting address of the memory that is allocated for a is the memory address that is stored into p. Now we can check by using the percentage specifier percentage p and a printf address of a and address stored in p, and we can also check the memory allocated for p in bytes by using a size of operator. Okay, now once we store the address, we can indirectly refer the refer the value of this variable by using a pointer. That means value stored at that address. For that we are going to use an operator called dereferencing. So the dereferencing operator called is star. Now star followed by pointer gives you the value at that address. This can be used both at the left hand side as well as the right hand side. When it is used in the right hand side, it gets the value. When it is used in the left hand side of the assignment, it is used to assign the value indirectly. So like here, when we use star PTR is referring to the value at that address. Value at that address of this variable value. That means previously it is 25, now it is modified to 50. We can check that in the program. So star P equal to 30. Now it modifies the value stored at address A. So the value stored at that address A is 20. Now it is modified to 30. You can check by running. So this is the pointer. And it creates a a.exe file. Now we can run that a.exe. You can see here the address of A as well as the address stored in P both are same, because we had written P is equal to address of A. And the memory allocated for P is 8 bytes. And the value stored in P is, so we have checked the value stored in P by value at the address stored in P by using a star P, that is 20, because initial value of A is 20. Now we have modified indirectly by using it in the left hand side, that is star P equal to 30, so which indirectly modifies the value of A. That means the value at address. So now we get the value of A as 30. Okay. So now by using a star P, you can indirectly modify the value of A or value of the address stored in P. We can indirectly modify. This is something that we are going to use in the call by reference. Okay. Next, so why do we need to specify the type of a pointer? Now, as we know that whether it is a character pointer or an integer pointer, float pointer, all stores the starting address of a pointer. But when we dereference, how many bytes that it has to fetch from that starting address depends on the type of that pointer. If it is an integer pointer, it gets 4 bytes, assuming that 4 bytes required for storing an integer. If the character requires 1 byte to store, then when it is dereferenced, when a pointer is dereferenced, it reads 1 byte from that starting address. Okay. And the another use case is when we are doing a pointer arithmetic. When we increment or decrement a pointer, how many bytes that it will be incremented depends on the type of the pointer. If it is an integer pointer, P plus 1, if P is 1000 and P plus 1 is 1004, because it should point to the next possible integer, because the first integer is from 1000 to 1003 and the next integer is from 1004 to 1007. So when you do P plus 1, it will point to the next possible integer. It will be incremented by 4 bytes. If it is a character pointer, it will increment by 1 byte. Okay. Now, can you guess what happens when the type mismatches? Something like, if suppose int A equal to 256 is given and a char star PTR equal to address of A. Now here it's a character pointer but storing the starting address of an integer variable. When we do star PTR, it fetches only 1 byte. Now whether it gives the 256, because 1 byte at least requires 255, the maximum value that can be stored in 1 byte is 255 only. So 256 and all those will go into different. So, and the what value you will get depends on the whether it is a little endineous or a big endinean architecture. Okay. Next, so there is a special type of a pointer called a null pointer. So now, as we know that when we declare a int star p, it contains some garbage value. But if we have to make sure that it is not pointing to any value, we are going to use a special pointer called null, capital letters null, which says if a pointer is having that value, that means that it is not pointing to any memory location. Okay, this is especially useful when a function is returning a pointer. If that function is failed due to some reason, then we are going to return a null, saying that this is not successful. Okay, so in those use cases we will be using null pointer. So we cannot dereference the null pointer, an important thing. Okay, next, a pointer to a pointer. It's not only like a normal variable, a pointer also can store the address of another pointer variable. That's where we will be using a pointer to pointer. To declare, we will be using int star, data type star star pointer to name. Now, if I have int star star p, it can store the address of an integer pointer. Okay. Now, so we will see an example here. So how to declare a pointer to pointer? We will be using int star star q. Now we can use q as address of p. Now when I say star p, what happens? Value at address stored in q. So value at address stored in q. Stored in q. If I use star q, it gives the address of a. Because that's what. So we should use percentage p to get the. Okay, so as you can see that because star q is referring to the value stored in p. Value stored in p is address of a. Okay, and similarly you can also use star star p. So when you use star star p, now this is an unary operator. First it applies. So the associativity is right to left. First it applies the right side star. So right side star gives you the value stored in p, that is address of a. Now star followed by address of a gives you the value at a. So that is value at a is now 1000. Okay. So these are the fundamentals that are required for understanding the pointers. And in the next lecture, we will be discussing what is call by value. Thank you.